Here's to you, Tim Robinson, with your hilarity and thousand-yard gaze. Gaze. What's that you say, Tim Robinson? You and Paul Rudd have chemistry for days. 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 Friendship comes to us from A24 and writer director Andrew DeYoung, who's done shorts and various television shows. Check out his IMDb page for the full list of his work, and features Tim Robinson as Craig Waterman, who's supposed to stay curious, Craig Waterman. At least that's according to his new neighbor, Austin, played by Paul Rudd, who's just fresh off of Death of a Unicorn, a very beat-off comedy from A24. Might have said that wrong. Nevertheless, that was a whole lot of fun. You should check out Death of a Unicorn after you check out Friendship. It is the latest attempt by A24 basically to expand its horizons filmography and basically reach a wider audience. I saw a special screening in one of the most engaged theaters that I have seen in quite a while. Holy fucking shit, that place was jammed full. Jammed, are you jelly? Boy, that was a terrible goddamn joke. Speaking of terrible jokes, some terribly awkward jokes in this one, but it's for the goddamn best. If you are a fan of what Tim Robinson provides for the realm of comedy, then you're going to enjoy this. If you're not a fan of what he provides, then I don't know if this is going to change your mind. If you're just a casual fan of his work, I've seen a little bit of the sketch comedy show. I can't say that I'm necessarily invested in it, but I've seen the stuff that he's done on SNL, and I think he's quite a funny guy. And also, I think he's perfect for comedy, he's perfect for horror, and he seems like a pretty nice guy. But he just has that really just thousand-yard stare, that just weird look, that look where he just looks like he's going to snap at any point, and he just plays the role perfectly. This is a mixture of toxic masculinity, put on display, where we also have some physical comedy, some dark comedy, straight out of The Cable Guy. I would argue, though, that Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd had better chemistry than Jim Carrey and Matthew Broderick did in The Cable Guy. Not that they didn't have terrific chemistry, but let's be honest, Jim Carrey was the highlight of that goddamn movie. And Robinson and Rudd play off each other perfectly. And Kate Mara's in this as Tammy, who's with Craig. And they have a strained relationship, shall we say. We see that in the very beginning. And Craig is well-meaning, but also it's very obvious he's kind of set in his own ways. He has a way that he wants to do things. He doesn't recognize that things are changing around him and that people maybe are a little bit sick of his behavior, shall we say, and that certain things are going to be changing. And he won't realize that until it's too late, let's just say that. And we've all been there before, when you are stuck in a rut and everything, and you see that certain things are just, certain things like, you like how things are going, you don't recognize that maybe you have pushed some people away. Now, I'm trying not to get into too many spoilers, but that's kind of set in the trailer, shall we say. He does meet Austin after a package is delivered to Craig's house, and a friendship is struck up. And then after a certain awkward situation with a guy's night, then it turns a little bit dark and a little bit weird. It's not horror-like, but it's very awkward, and it does show just how certain friendships can really rise up and then just drop like crazy. Because, maybe some people, they get along well, but then suddenly something shifts. Maybe you recognize that somebody doesn't match your vibe, whatever it is. But I'm going to say this is one of the most hilarious movies that I have seen in quite a while. This and Death of a Unicorn, it's a great year for comedy. I mean, there's some really, really good stuff. There was some hilarious moments in Clown in the Cornfield, that is. And what I like about this is that it is mostly like just a series of sketches, like some SNL type and maybe a little bit darker in some sketches, with a loose narrative that actually does tie in beautifully by the end. But the thing is, had it not been for Tim Robinson and not been for Paul Rudd, and even Kate Mara to an extent, this wouldn't have worked at all. Now, I will say that I think for those that are really fans of Tim's particular brand of comedy, and maybe they were more ingrained into what he does, people were popping for like certain cameos in this that maybe didn't quite register with me. I mean, I recognize a couple of the actors, but I think it's more for those that are into whatever is going on. But that being said, that doesn't take away from the fact that this is absolutely a hilarious movie and a raucous time. and a great, great trip. I mean, this is best watched with an engaged audience like I was in, and it was great. I was all the way in the back, but it was fun. It just engulfs you. You get into it. And it's also like a breezy 95 minutes. And it's really a whole lot of fun. I mean, Tim and Paul are tremendous here. There are some weird moments, obviously, as you would expect, given the fact that A24 themselves are involved. And when you get A24 involved in a comedy, you are almost guaranteed to have some strangeness. And I'm not going to say necessarily everything works, but like 95% of this works. And even the 5% that's kind of it doesn't matter. It doesn't take away from the fact that this movie is absolutely really just a rip-roaringly great time. I'm going to get into spoilers if you want to check it out. It's in theaters here later this week. But nevertheless, that being said, 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So basically, we start off with Tammy, Kate Mara's character. She's at a sport group. She has had cancer. She beat it. And Craig is there with her. And things, he's like, hey, you're doing great and this kind of stuff and everything. And it almost seems like that they met at therapy, just the way that they're, the way things are going. But then it turns out actually they are together. She has a flower business. She talks about these beautiful flowers. There's even like this one nice part with this parted, like this wide open flower that actually was, a very, well done shot. Craig does like office work and like, tech work with like apps to like, kind of goad people into continuously using them, guilting them practically. That's a nice little, bit of social commentary. Austin, when he meets him, they strike up a friendship. He's a weatherman, and he's doing the evening weather. He also has a rock band stuff, and basically we get some Cable Guy vibes with the way Craig looks at Austin because he thinks he's so cool, and he didn't want to go hang out with him at first, but Tammy kind of encouraged it. Tammy's also friends with her ex, which I think kind of where this whole damn thing's going. And there are other people in this, like Meredith Garrettson, John Glazer. You have Billy Brick. You'll recognize Billy Brick from a recent Neon Studios offering. Whitmer Thomas, and, some other people that have been in various sketch comedies and some other films. And this does show, though, what, like, happens when a certain friendship goes sideways. Now, it's pretty obvious that Austin isn't all he's cracked up to be. Like, he's putting on a bit of a facade. But also, it's pretty obvious that Craig has his own issues. His issues that he will not confront. And during this one part where, like, there's this running narrative where he doesn't want Marvel spoilers about something. Like this latest Marvel movie. And I mean, I think we could all not want spoilers. Which is why I put spoilers, spoiler section in any of my reviews. And I try to warn people. But as, he's talking to Austin and everything, sees him, like, performing, like, with his band and stuff like that. And he says, you should get a drum set. You should do this, we could jam, we could do this kind of stuff. So he does end up getting a drum set. Unfortunately, by the time he gets the drum set, wheels have been set in motion because of a guy's night that went a little bit bad. They had the helmet and the boxing gloves on, stuff like that. And, yeah, Austin may have taken a few liberties with Craig there. I mean, they were just doing some sparring, but there's a thing about nosebleeds that Craig's having and everything. Is his life falling apart? Is this all in his head? Like, are these just scenarios he's creating and everything? And is he really just, completely, absolutely, totally destroyed? Has he destroyed everything around him? I mean, there are a few things that could be questioned here. And maybe it's just a fun comedy and I'm just reading a little bit too much into it, but it is A24 and it does make you think. But he does end up punching Austin, and that kind of sets things in motion where now Austin really doesn't want to talk to him anymore after giving him another package that was accidentally sent to his house. He says, I really don't want to continue this friendship at this time. Well, you can't just pump me up, accept me and then drop me. You can't do that. There are elements of truth to that. If you do accept somebody and you make them feel welcome and stuff like that, then yes, it is a little bit, rude to do that. But at the same time, Craig's very awkward and very weird and giving bad vibes, even though there's some dude bros, some very, high muckety-muck office guys that are with Austin. And there's also a weird side thing with Tammy and her son, seemingly. Very, very almost incestuous, the way that one is. And I do have to say the character playing, or the actor playing the son, he does a pretty good job too. And before this, one thing that ties into something a little bit later on is they go on an adventure, him and Austin do, where they go through these, this viaduct, these sewers and stuff like that, and they end up breaking in this city hall, and there's this thing about this mayor. And yeah, it's really kind of cool and fun and everything, but Austin's trying to have fun, but also trying to have his adult life and his adult, job and stuff like that. And Craig kind of doesn't seem like he wants to grow up, and we get certain things going on, and more awkward exchanges with Austin. His life's starting to unravel. It's clear that Tammy is not happy in their relationship. And that actually gets magnified even more when, he's trying to have a relationship with the son, like, interacting with him, that kind of stuff. And the son's into, girls and that kind of stuff. There's a weird little side thing later on where he says, oh, I need to get a job because having 2 girlfriends is very expensive. I don't know why you would have 2 girlfriends. You would probably just have 2 side pieces. Take it from experience. But nevertheless, he ends up getting this offer, Craig does, to work for the mayor and try to get him reelected and, try to modernize his campaign. And that's great. And then when he finally gets a call, he gets a package from, delivered that's supposed to be for Austin. And he decides to go take it to his house. Now, instead of just normally putting it on the goddamn front porch, he decides not to do that because he's imagined scenarios where he's like saved Austin when Austin's like falling in the backyard and picks him up and stuff like that straight out, like again, creepiness straight out of the Cable Guy. And all this stuff, and, just imagining this parasitical or social relationship, just as like, where he's obviously a little bit off his tits, shall we say. And there's even like, something earlier where they've eaten mushrooms. They've done that. Maybe he's been tripping this whole goddamn time. There's also this weird little sidebar with this guy named Tony that they call T-Boy that gives out drugs, that also works at a cell phone shop. Zenith Mobile, I believe is the name of it. And there's this clothing shop named OVD where Craig basically, finds the only clothes that fit him. And he is kind of a little bit fractured with his relationship with Austin, but he also respects him. He's tried showing up his work. He doesn't really want to accept that. He doesn't want, all this stuff's just unraveling. And then he decides to take Tammy into the sewers to have some fun. And mind you, she just, he puts her up on this one thing because she overcame cancer. They're happy, all this stuff, and he wants her to go on this adventure. And then she kind of just takes off and just vanishes. And seemingly like he lost her, so now all this crazy stuff's going on. Meanwhile, that thing earlier I said about the package that he delivered, instead of just taking it to the porch, he takes it into the house, takes it through the broken, sliding glass door that he broke when he accidentally ran into it and then it burst later. He ends up taking a gold gun from Austin's house. He is also on the phone with his boss while Austin's wife and him, or at least Austin's wife, is home. And he ends up running out, but he has the gun, he's doing this, and he's also on the phone with the boss and trying to do this. Then the work meeting doesn't go all that well because he's got a bad strained relationship with his coworkers. He ends up getting fired, but somehow has another job later on. It's weird because it kind of bounces around a lot. Tammy has wanted a bigger business, or bigger vehicle for her flower business. But she's missing, so he's just freaking out. She's in the sewer, this kind of stuff. He doesn't know what to do. The son seems to hate him. Austin's upset at him because he thinks he broke into his house, which technically he did. But then they go into these sewers doing an investigation and everything, trying to find Tammy. Well, then it's revealed that Austin sent him there, or, showed him that they end up arrested. And because Austin's kind of a local celebrity, he's going to get this one cop wants a selfie with him. Well, there's this piss on the floor also, and he slips, and it turns out, oh my God, Paul Rudd's actually bald Rudd, as it were. And he wants Craig to keep that secret. He'll keep that secret. Suddenly, Tammy shows back up. They find her, and I think it's supposed to be a metaphor for the fact that he finally lost her, and that she's going to go back with her ex. And she decides to do that. So now his life's totally unraveling. His job, all that stuff and everything. Strained relationships. Doesn't have friends anymore. He's just all upset. And then we get, a little bit of like a finale there where it seems like things are going well. He bought a van for Tammy for her, deal. Everything seems to be going well. And then he sees something that Austin referenced earlier about the sweet yellow Corvette that was like, his dream car. And he had in his driveway. So he decides to go over these speed bumps that he had installed because he's so, safety oriented. See, all this stuff is just like mentioned and then just like sprinkled in throughout the movie. So the plot is simplistic, but some of the skits are a little bit all over the place. He ends up basically talking to Austin Toxton, as it were. And, things are going okay. He apologizes, but then he can't stay at the party. And then he decides to start waving the gun around and doing this and basically freaking out and having one final snapping method, shall we say. And one of the guys ends up calling the cops. Paul Rudd tries to duck and his hairpiece comes off again. So he tells him to take his hairpiece off or put it back on. Don't worry, secret's safe with me. Well, then he tries to run through the goddamn door, and he does, and he ends up hitting it. So now he's all cut up, and he's all upset, and Paul Rudd's carrying him out like he imagined himself carrying out Paul Rudd before. And then he's in the back of the squad car. He sees Paul Rudd kind of wink at him. Is this all in his head? What the hell is going on? Like, everything seemed to be working out a little bit too good where Tammy and him are suddenly on the same page. And, yeah, so clearly I think he just lost his goddamn mind. And men shouldn't have friends. Because it just ends badly. I guess. Friendship is definitely weird. It's definitely a dark comedy, and it's not for everybody. But I was very entertained by it, even as I was all over the place with this review. I'm going to say A+, because I had a lot of fun with it. So, agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Rethlin. I'll see you soon.